Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. And with me is a very special guest, Prime Minister Janez Janša of Slovenia, to talk about bilateral, regional and global issues of interest or concern to both Ljubljana and New Delhi. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to DD India. May I wish you a very happy New Year.
Thank you, and very happy New Year to you and everybody who is watching your TV.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Now, before I come to bilateral and regional issues, may I start by asking you about the COVID situation in Slovenia? How is Slovenia coping with the pandemic and how is the vaccination coming along?
Well, could be better, but also could be worse. We were quite heavily hit with the last wave of pandemic during the last months of last year. And now Omicron is coming to Slovenia also, as is the case in whole Europe. Fortunately, the numbers of people affected and hospitalized are still manageable. And we hope that we will reach the peak of this wave within next 2 weeks and then everything to come down. We hope that the current level of vaccination, which is not as we wish to be, but still we successfully fully or partially vaccinated over 80% of all people above 50 and close to 70% of all adult population. So we think that this level will help us to fight this last Omicron wave of COVID. We are looking to Great Britain, Denmark, Portugal, and some other European countries where they have high numbers of infections, but not so high numbers of hospitalized people. And we hope that the same situation will appear in Slovenia during the next 2 weeks.
Talking about the pandemic, Mr. Prime Minister, do you have a view on the origin and spread of the virus from Wuhan in China to all corners of the globe? Also, we saw in the case of South Africa and the Omicron variant, South Africa detected it quickly and alerted the world, unlike China in the case of the COVID-19 coronavirus 2 years ago.
Exactly what you said. In January in 2020, I was on the official visit, political visit in Indonesia, and I saw with my eyes that the pandemic or the coronavirus is topic number one already in Asia. But in Europe, this was not the case. So I think that we will never 100% know what's the origin of this virus. Was it artificially developed in laboratory, or was some kind of accident, or it was natural origin? But we surely know that China didn't behave in good faith at the beginning, so we were not informed what's really happening. We knew that they cancelled internal flights from Wuhan to other cities in China, but at the same time the international flights went on to Italy, for instance, and Italy was first European country to suffer a lot, exactly because of many people coming from China to this part of Europe. So, and I think that we have to discuss this issue, and we have to make China's authorities accountable.
Indeed. Mr. Prime Minister, let me now come to Slovenia-India relations. Now, Slovenia and India celebrate the 30th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations this year, that's 2022. Now, for the benefit of viewers joining us from Slovenia, India, and around the world, India recognized Slovenia in 1992 and ties were established on 18th May 1992. Now, India's president visited Slovenia in 2019, and from Slovenia, the Prime Minister visited India in 2011 and the Foreign Minister in 2013. And by the way, Mr. Prime Minister, you share your birthday with Prime Minister Modi of India, that's 17th September. Now, how would you describe bilateral ties between India and Slovenia as they exist today and looking ahead as well?
Well, I'm really glad that we established our diplomatic relations the same year when Slovenia was recognized as independent country, exactly 30 years ago. We are celebrating this start of heavy weight international recognitions from 1992. And in May there was a peak, and we'll celebrate this peak too. And since establishing official relations between Slovenia and India, our relations have developed every year. And I'm really glad that also during last year, when Slovenia held rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union, we were able to make some progress also on the bilateral relations between the European Union and India. And I remember a very good discussion we had between the European Council and your Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, before Slovenia taking rotating presidency. We realized after frank discussion that we are strategic partners, and that maybe those relations between European Union and India are in current very complicated global situation the most promised across the globe. And whatever we can do as a country to contribute to this situation to be exploited and this goal, our common goals to be fulfilled, we will do our best.
Indeed. And talking about bilateral ties, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm told that traditional Indian medicine, also known as Ayurveda, is popular, is an official practice in Slovenia. It's classified as a complementary and alternative medicine practice. I'm curious to understand, do Slovenian people in general, what do they know about India in terms of maybe Indian films or yoga or food or traditional Indian medicine for that matter?
All this, I think that knowledge about India in Slovenia is quite high. I think you're the first Asian country regarding the amount of knowledge about any country in the continent, and tens of thousands of my compatriots have already visited India. Ayurveda is very popular here. Also, the Indian cuisine is becoming more and more popular. But also, I'm glad when I see when I'm meeting, the tourists from India coming to Slovenia, to Bled, also for skiing. Last time I saw a family from Calcutta skiing in our ski art. So I think that we have many opportunities to exploit, and also our economic cooperation, taking into account the size of our country and our economies, is quite good. India is our second biggest economic partner from this part of the world, and we are cooperating in many areas: electronics, solar power, hydro power plants technology. Also, we are glad that a Slovenian company which is producing the training planes for civil purpose, also for the army, signed a huge contract a few years ago with your government for training. So there are many areas where we are cooperating, not only tourism.
Indeed. In September last year, Mr. Prime Minister, Indian Foreign Minister called on you in Slovenia, and you put out a tweet on the occasion saying that you discussed relations between India and Slovenia, India and the European Union, and the global situation, in particular, the geopolitical changes or challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. And you put out two hashtags, South China Sea and hashtag Taiwan. Now, from an Slovenian perspective, how do you see the situation in the Indo-Pacific and your relations with China and Taiwan in recent times?
Well, very complex question, but I will start with sharing with you my experience from my meeting with your foreign minister, because we had very frank discussion, and his assessment about the situation in South China Sea, in Pacific or Indo-Pacific region was very, very accurate. I can say that we agreed on the picture he delivered, and he was very precise. He was very precise, and also my belief, and this is also the majority belief inside of the European politics, is that this is now despite all these problems happening between Russia, Ukraine, and other things, but the key issue is Pacific now, and India is a crucial country here. It's a crucial country for balancing those tensions there, for aligning with all other countries which wants all planet, but also this specific part of the globe to live in peace. And you ask about Taiwan. I think that for everybody who knows the history and who knows that the legitimate successor of China, was what was the rest of China escaping to Taiwan, that we support the sovereign decision of the Taiwanese people. If they want to join China, if there is their free will, without any pressure, without any military intervention, and without any blackmailing, without strategic cheating, as it is happening in Hong Kong currently, then we will support it. But if Taiwanese people wants to live independently, we have to support also this position. And I think that this is the main issue, and all division regarding the question of Taiwan is focused on this issue. And I think that we have to be principled, and I think that we have to work together. And as I said at the beginning, India is a crucial factor here to guarantee the balance of power, and with this the very foundation of all kinds of possible peaceful solutions.
And talking about Taiwan, Mr. Prime Minister, does the Slovenian struggle for independence hold some lessons for Taiwan also? Do you, for instance, support a proposal for a ban on imports from Xinjiang in particular, given the forced labor taking place there?
Well, this last issue, we would like to have more firm EU politics, because sometimes this question included, we are very strong on words, but not as strong in deeds. And Slovenia is fighting because of our experiences, you mentioned partially, because of our struggle for independence. for this gap between the words and this to be as narrow as possible. So, and we firmly supported the government of Lithuania, and we are still supporting it during these pressures happening, because frankly speaking, there is vast majority of the EU member countries holding some kind of representative offices with Taiwan, and Lithuania is not exemption. It's not exemption. There are some slight differences in naming the missions, but this is not important. I think that China changed this. China protested every time when some European country established such offices, but they never went so far as they did in this case, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying trying to isolate a country, small country, who also fought for its independence 30 years ago. I think that, formally, European Union backed Lithuania, and I think that any kind of proceeding pressure on Lithuania and some other countries in Europe will not benefit China's government. So it's, good relations, good trade relations are in, common interest. And if one side is trying to hurt these relations, maybe they could benefit on short term, but on long term, we are all losers.
Since you spoke about Lithuania, Mr. Prime Minister, how do you see the Chinese economic coercion using trade as a weapon? Also, like Lithuania in 2021, are you considering, for instance, quitting the 17+1 group or elevating your ties with Taiwan going forward?
Well, actually, we have normal relations with Taiwan. Last year, when we saw some good measures, anti-pandemic measures in Taipei, I personally called Health Minister of Taiwan, and we ran an audio-video conference exchanging our experiences. And I personally, I think I visited Taiwan 4 or 5 times so far. They are democratic country, and it's difficult to listen a capital with one-party system to lecture about democracy and peace around the world. A country which is democratic and which is respecting all international democratic standards, international law included. So, and it's such a pity that China is opposing the membership of Taiwan in World Health Organization. I think that it's in benefit also of China to have a neighboring country a member of such organization, because we saw exactly in this pandemic situation that virus does know no borders.
So as you said, you support Taiwan's inclusion in the World Health Organization. You spoke about how Taiwan is a democracy, unlike China, which has a one-party rule. In that context, do you see yourself elevating your ties with Taiwan going forward, similarly to what, say, Lithuania has done?
Actually, we are working on establishing, to exchange the representatives. Of course, this will not be the level. This will not be the level of the embassies. It will be the same level as many of EU member countries already have. And frankly speaking, if we we would had stronger coalitions in former years. I think we would establish such trade representative offices already in the past, because this is of issue of common benefit. And it's also when I'm speaking with our businessmen who are making trade with Taiwan, they told me that, okay, we are making trade with Taiwan, but those companies from Taiwan, they're also making trade with mainland China. So it's, and they're doing this between themselves. At the same time, they're opposing, the same relations between Taiwan and other countries, which is ridiculous.
Let me now come to the other issues confronting Slovenia in general and Europe in particular. That's the situation at the border between Poland and Belarus, the border or the migrant crisis, number one. And number two, the EU-Russia tensions over Ukraine. Now, would you welcome or favor direct US-Russia talks? And where do you see or want to see Ukraine in the NATO or as a buffer between the two parties, so to speak?
When we are speaking about the Ukraine, we are speaking about a sovereign country of 40 million people. We are speaking about the country which has suffered a lot. The heaviest suffering happened during the Soviet time, when Ukraine was ruled by brutal communist regime, and millions of people, starved to death or were killed. And I completely understand them that they don't want to come under the authorities of the same capital. Again, doesn't matter that some things changed in Russia during this time too. And imagine that somebody is speaking about India or Slovenia to be a buffer zone. Nobody wants to be a buffer zone. I don't wish to any country, to any nation, to be treated as a buffer zone. It's humiliating. So it's on them. If Ukraine wants to become the member of the European Union, if they decide, if they have a referendum, they vote for it, they have all our support. If they don't want to, they also have our support. It's their sovereign decision. It's not the decision of Brussels, neither the decision of Washington, neither the decision of Moscow. And regarding these talks between Moscow and Washington now, I think that first of all, European Union has to be involved, because this is our neighborhood, and also the vast part of the Europe is part of NATO. So I think that both Washington and Moscow have to respect this situation. And of course, also from our side, the European part of NATO has also to do its homework. So not only to expect that difficult task will be fulfilled by the Americans.
One quick follow-up question, Mr. Prime Minister. Given what is happening between the EU and Russia on the one hand, and the situation in the Indo-Pacific, from a Slovenian perspective, who do you see as a greater threat to the larger European Union? Is it Russia or could it be China?
Well, even if this is not the case, but I'm afraid it is, I'm speaking about the possible coordination between Beijing and Moscow. There is some strange situation now across the globe, and I'm afraid that some people in China or in Russia, they want to exploit this situation. And this is why I think that this pressure on Ukraine and on NATO at the same time from Russia, and this pressure from Beijing to Taipei, to Taiwan, they are somehow coordinated. They're somehow coordinated because, if somebody is pushed to deal with two major crises in two different parts of the world, he has to split their diplomatic efforts, the economic efforts, and also military efforts. And this is why I think that those threats or those conditionings are somehow linked, coordinated, and we have to be aware of this because this is making everything even more dangerous. So I think that next weeks, next months will be of crucial importance for both areas.
Indeed. And finally, Mr. Prime Minister, I want our viewers, those who are watching this interview, to get to know you better. Now, you are prolific on the social media, on Twitter in particular. How do you manage your time? How do you get the time to be so active on Twitter? And what are your views on social media in general?
Well, social media, they are tools like TV stations or newspapers in former times, with some specifics, of course. But you can use those tools for good or for bad. So it's on us. It's always on us. And this has to be, I think, first approach when we are speaking about social medias. They are reality, and they make real-time interventions or real-time actions when those actions are needed, where you have to inform your public, your country on something possible. So I don't glorify the social medias. I don't think that this is something worst happened during the modern times. They are just tools, as any tool. You can use also military tools for defense or for the attack.
Mr. Prime Minister, now the mountains brought you and your wife together, but at the same time, I want you to tell our viewers about the story behind the lost engagement ring.
How did you learn this?
Well, you could put it to good research, I guess.
Yeah, you did very deep research, so congratulations. Yeah, well, this was something which almost changed my life. So a coincidence which obviously happens sometime. So she lost somewhere, she didn't knew where, the engaged ring, and after months, somewhere in the wild, when we parked the car, I found it. So
Fantastic.
Would never believe if somebody will tell me in advance. So.
Mr. Prime Minister,
but I didn't know that this story is well known. So I think I just described it once.
Mr. Prime Minister, now you are a man of many parts. You love the mountains. You're a mountaineer. You love football, golf, skiing. You are a full-time 24/7 politician. You founded an IT company. I'm told it was called Micro Ada. You wrote books. You've dabbled in journalism as well. You applied for a post in a newspaper in 1985, if I'm correct. If I were to ask you, what's your first love, Mr. Prime Minister? What do you love doing the most out of these things?
Currently, well, my first love is a family. I have two young boys now, 8 and 10 years. And this means there is no golf. There is quite not much time also for mountaineering. So when we have time, we go family skiing, also cross-country skiing now during the winter. And but we do hiking with the children during the summer. And maybe when we are in opposition, everything is much easier. But now when we have the government, EU presidency, and the pandemic and everything, the time is very scarce, and this is the most precious thing we have in our life.
Right. On that note, may I thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for making time for us here at DD India. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, really. And congratulations for you. I congratulate you for your deep research. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Appreciate it.